Every human has a snapshot of reality. Another way to think of it might be as the island of you, where the topography is made up of patterns. Patterns of predictability, patterns of evidence and history, all the factors that shape how you think. These patterns serve at the pleasure of your editorial voice. Think of it as the port authority that oversees which patterns get kicked off the island and which are allowed on. Hopefully, your voice quarantines you against wrong-headed decisions. Of course, if it's dysfunctional, it advances faulty understanding and bias, which are not good things. In the ultimate sense, the topography of your life is created by you. If the ecology is sparse or unexamined, it's your fault. On the other hand, if it's rich and reasonably informed, you get the credit for that as well. Your editorial voice is absolutely you, and absolutely subject to the values you induct into your life. What if there was an X event that blew apart your reality? Your settled beliefs once upon a time were shattered and disappeared, leaving behind a deeply wounded understanding. What kind of X event are we talking about here? Maybe a thermonuclear war breaks out and hundreds of thousands of people are vaporized in under 2 minutes. Or maybe the discovery of archaeology on Mars or the moon, and the announcement unbuckles everything in your reality. Or maybe millions of people disappear suddenly. Maybe it's a religious event. Who knows what an X event would look like, but more importantly, how would it influence the patterns that define you? Would you go all catatonic on us, lie down and twitch a few times and then die? Or would you take a time out and restart with a revised snapshot of reality? And here's the good news. Your editorial voice is fully capable of just such a restart. One thing's for sure. There's more to reality than our patterns allow for. The universe is massive, and the multiverse hypermassive and infinitely complex. And if we had all the patterns of the cosmos stuffed into our pretty little heads, it would probably be like setting off a brain bomb. God did us a favor by limiting our understanding, by not giving us all information about all things. In fact, the Bible openly states this. Some mysteries are God's, and for good reason. The freedom that comes with having an editorial voice means that we have the sad freedom to blind understanding and to blunt instinct. For this reason, God set one last line of sight on himself. Recursive patterning is the great missionary to our prodigal minds. Even when we look at a tree and say, God didn't make that pine tree, it's just another gymnosperm sprung from a long line of transitional forms to become what we see now. And the voice of the Lord would reply, and how did this assumption arise? Did your reasoning happen in a random, disordered space? Or does your perception emerge from a naturally acquired template that organizes? A perception that points to an arborist who sculpted all pathways through recursive order, with patterns that didn't have to be, but are, patterns that lead to himself. As you reassemble your snapshot, let your proofs be heart proofs, based on the instinct and logic that calls to your soul beyond words. Lay aside your practiced rants against institutional religion and hypocrites. Their goofiness has no bearing on your communion with the Heavenly Father. Reassemble your patterns around a simple act of faith. Taste and see that the Lord is good. If an X event happens to me, my plan is to go to the Bible first And which books of the Bible will I be taking most of my patterns from? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, probably. That's where you find the heart of God pumping out in the open for all to see. And as for that X event, whatever it turns out to be, anything can be survived. And the editorial voice is the secret. Even when it seems all is lost, your editorial voice can sort out the path that leads to the arborist who created the garden. For what can be known about God is plain to see, because he has revealed himself to all. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. So we are without excuse. Even though we suspected there was a God, we did not honor him nor give thanks to him, and instead became futile in our thinking, and our foolish hearts were darkened.